Okay. Morai v'Rabotai. Rabbi Binyamin over here. We got Rabbi Binyamin. Are you ready? Is it tzaddikim? Wow, we got really top notch in the front. It's starting to get intimidating over here. All right, Parashat Shemot. Am Yisrael is in Mitzrayim. And the Torah introduces the perspective of the Egyptians. We spoke about this a bit on Monday night actually. But I want to focus on a different point. It says, Vayakom melech hadash al Mitzrayim. A new king came to Mitzrayim, asher lo yada et Yosef, that had no knowledge of Yosef. Now what does that mean, that he had no knowledge of Yosef? There's a very beautiful Ramban in Parashat Vayeshev. Thank you. The Ramban says over there, the Gzera is emet ve'haritzut sheker. Gzera means the decree. The decree is the truth and final. And haritzut in Hebrew means the diligence. A person who works hard to undermine the decree, sheker. No matter how hard a person works, the decree will remain. It's not going to change. Just a few days ago in the Israeli government, they had a disagreement amongst the right wing, religious, and the left wing. And the left wing were getting upset at the religious. And how can you go ahead and even have anything bad to say about the army and how it influences people? If it wasn't for the army, we wouldn't be here today. If we didn't have an army, if we would have had an army during the Holocaust, we wouldn't have lost so many people. That's what the leftists said, which is essentially the slogan called Never Again. Never Again means that if we have an army, so a Holocaust cannot happen to us. And Rabotai, this Ramban completely shatters that concept. In all elements of our Torah and our mitzvot, we have to realize the minute there is a gezerah, there is a decree, all of the charitzut, all of the diligence, all of the work, all of the effort is totally in vain. It means nothing. It's not going to change the decree in iota. Now, what's the source that I say this from? Obviously, we chas v'shalom shouldn't make up our own things. It might sound nice, but where do we learn it from? We learn it from the brothers of Yosef, says the Ramban. The brothers of Yosef saw the dreams of Yosef. And Yosef had these dreams that were really prophecies, that the brothers were going to bow down to him. Havo, ani ve'immecha ve'achecha lishtachavot lecha arza, that we're going to all bow down to you, Yosef. Is that something you really think is going to happen? So the brothers wanted to guarantee that it won't happen. They were very charutzim, very diligent to make sure it doesn't happen. How did they guarantee that it doesn't happen? They sold Yosef. They said if he's the slave, nobody's bowing down to a slave. And that's what they tried to do. Little did they know that it was actually specifically and only through their actions and their diligence was Yosef able to become the viceroy of Egypt, and only because of that they ended up having to bow down to Yosef. Their diligence not only did not assure that the decree will be nullified, it actually guaranteed the decree's existence and fulfillment. Now, the idea, before I get to the idea of the Kli Yakar, I want to show another example that's brought down in Masechet Shabbat. We all know the famous story of this man named Yosef Mokir Shabbat. You heard of him? Mokir means he honors the Shabbat. He paid respect to the Shabbat. What did Yosef Mokir Shabbat do that was so honorable and respectful to the Shabbat? So the Gemara there explains there was a goy who was very wealthy. He had real estate, he had portfolios, all these stocks, everything that you could imagine. He was very diverse in his finances, and he wanted to know what the future had in store. So there is such a thing called mazalot, especially for goyim. Goyim have this concept called the mazal. And he said, I'm going to have an expert look in the stars and tell me. And sure enough, the experts look in the stars and they say, yeah, you know your neighbor, Yosef Mokir Shabbat? Yeah, I know him. He's going to have all your wealth. What? He's going to have all my wealth? Are you kidding me? You know how much wealth I have? How much I worked hard? How much I did? I'm not going to allow for such a thing to happen, that he's going to take all of my wealth. I'm going to make sure to keep it as close as possible to me, that he won't be able to do that. And he started selling his buildings in New York and everything that he owns, all the lands in Zimbabwe and all the finances in the stock market, sold everything, converted into liquid cash, bought himself a very expensive, one of the most expensive diamonds that existed in the world. All of his money was spent just on that diamond. It was worth what the equivalent today, maybe billions of dollars. And he said, a diamond, I can make sure 100% I'm going to protect. And he decided that there's only one way to protect it. He can't leave it in his home because maybe someone could rob it. Yosef will come in and he'll take it. He says, I'm going to leave it on me at all times, and that way it's going to be secure. The Gemara says he was crossing a bridge, and the wind came, blew off his hat with the diamond, and it fell into the waters. There was no way for him to get it out. The next thing that happens, a fish eats the diamond, and the diamond is pulled out of the sea by a fisherman. The fisherman is right before Shabbat. Who is going to buy this fish? He asks around. They say, only one person is going to buy the fish right now. And that's Yosef Mokir Shabbat. And it was a nice, big, expensive fish. Yosef Mokir Shabbat had to actually borrow money in order to purchase the fish, but he didn't do it because he loved fish so much. He loved Shabbat so much. And that's what he really cared about. And he wanted to show honor and grandeur to the Shabbat. And therefore, he borrowed money. And parenthetically, you're only allowed to borrow money, really, if you have a way of paying back. You're not entitled to borrow money from somebody with no idea how it's going to be able to be paid back. So he must have had, a commitment that now he's going to have to work another, 3 hours a day. Because of the Shabbat, he was willing to take upon himself for maybe the next 10 years another job, just to be able to honor a Shabbat for 1 week. It was worth it for him. That's what's going on in Yosef Mokir Shabbat's mind. Now he buys the fish. He doesn't know that there's going to be an expensive diamond. He cuts it open, and all of a sudden this massive diamond just starts piercing through, and he sees it. He takes it. Obviously it's his. He doesn't have to return it. Even if it has a siman, it's the biggest case of Zuto Sheriam. You guys learned about Zuto Sheriam. Right? You learned Edu Mitziot. So he definitely has every right to keep it. There's total Yush. Even if there was a Yush, it's Gzerat HaKatuv. Ve'il taramta mehem umtza'ata. Right? So Pasuk says, it has to be Avudah Mimenu ve'ena Avudah Mikol Adam. If it's Avudah Mimenu,
He's a goy, he doesn't have to return it.
Stam, he didn't have to return it mitzad the goy. But even if it was a Jew, you say maybe the rov of the city was Jewish and it has a siman. Who knows? But either way, he definitely doesn't have to return it. So in terms of the halacha, he was totally allowed to keep it. He kept it. And sure enough, it was a massive Kiddush Hashem, because now he really got all of the wealth of that person. And the moral of the story is that a person who respects the Shabbat is not going to lose out. He's going to gain no matter what happens. That's why it's in Masechet Shabbat, because it really highlights how a person who takes care of Shabbat, the Shabbat takes care of him. But the question is, so why do we need the whole introduction? The goy looks up at the stars and does the whole thing and sells off his properties. Why is that necessary? Just tell me. There was a Jew. He was willing to lend money in order to buy a fish. In the fish there was a big diamond. Cut the goy out of the question. You don't need him in the conversation. A person was willing to invest in the Shabbat and he got paid back. Chazak u'baruch. That's the lesson of the story. So that's a very good question. The Etz Yosef asks this question and he gives an answer. He says the answer is to teach us a yesod. The Gemara also wants to teach us a concept that the gzera is emet ve'acharitzut sheker. That the decree is final and all of the diligence that one does is not going to go anywhere. As a matter of fact, it's going to produce the opposite result. Here, without this goy consolidating all of his wealth and putting it into one diamond, he never would have been able to. Really, al pidei chateva, how is he going to get all the wealth of the goy? It's an improbability that's statistically impossible. But because the goy tried to do his best to prevent it from happening, and he consolidated, it became very easy for it to be organized. So really, it was through the goy that Yosef Mukir Shabbat was able to take it. So the Gezerah was fulfilled al apam v'hamatam, despite all of the due diligence that happened. Which to me, I think now that we could really introduce the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar says that's the pshat. Like the Ramban told us about Yosef HaTzadik, that the brothers worked hard, and not only did they not get their desired result, but the opposite. It ended up being that because of what they did, they ended up having to bow down to Yosef. Paro, who then saw the danger that it was Am Yisrael, and the same story, really, the stars, he looks up at the stars, and they tell him there's going to be a Moshiach in Am Yisrael. There's going to be a person, a Jew, who's going to save this nation from slavery. And what does Paro say? I have to stop this. So he makes a decree to send all of the firstborns into the sea. Now little does Paro know that that decree is essentially, says the Kli Yakar beautifully, is what brought about the salvation of Am Yisrael. How so? Because it was due to that decree that all the children had to be hidden. And that Yocheved had to take her son and put him in the waters of the Nile. And then Moshe Rabbeinu travels down the Nile, and who finds him? Bat Paro. And Bat Paro takes him into the home. Now Rabotai, think of it logically. A slave, and the mentality of slavery that all of Am Yisrael had. A slave by definition doesn't rebel. The mentality, he's broken to a point that he's not thinking of freedom. He's not thinking of rebellion. It's just psychologically debilitating. It shackles him. What allowed there to be a manhig emerge from Am Yisrael? The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was not a slave. He was not in the slave. Not only was he not a slaver, he was growing out in the house of kings. So what actually generated the Moshe Rabbeinu that we have, the leadership that we have, was the training that he got from the house of Paro. So Paro's decree not only didn't prevent there being a Moshiach, it actually created the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu could be the Moshiach of Am Yisrael. It's amazing. The exact decree that he thought was going to help him is what's turned around and ended up being the demise of Paro and of Mitzrayim. Says the Kli Yakar, that's the pshat. Vayakom melech hadash asher lo yada et Yosef. He didn't know the lesson behind the story of Yosef and his brothers. If he would have known what Yosef and his brothers represented, that everything that they tried ended up backfiring, he never would have attempted the attempt that he did. Now behind that, you can say, Asher lo yada et Yosef, he didn't know the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat about Yosef Mokir Shabbat either. Because that same Gemara tells us that chidush of the Gzerah is emet, and the charitzut is sheker. So it comes out beautiful. There's a double Yosef, double connotation, the story of Yosef HaTzadik and the story of Yosef Mokir Shabbat. Huh? No, he doesn't. That's I added that one. I thought that was cute.
The relation to that and the army with the Holocaust.
No, the relationship is in general. The idea that when there is a gezerah, that we're going to go ahead and do a diligence and an effort that's going to revoke the gzerah is just not true. We might have to have a responsibility of ishtadlut. There is such a concept of ishtadlut. But to think that because of the ishtadlut or not because of the ishtadlut, we're revoking or dismissing, the opposite. We could do all of the ishtadlut in the world. And you could pile on ishtadlut after ishtadlut, and it won't make an iota of a difference. If there's a decree, there's a decree. Ve'hareaya, biggest proof is October 7th. We have an army, and we have intelligence, and we have capabilities, and we're able to take down Iran and all their force fields and everything else. The Maaseh, October 7th happened. And how did it happen? Nobody understands. Everybody's like, what? What's happening? How did it happen? The answer is, when there's a gezerah, no ishtadlut in the world. All your systems, all your AIs, all of your security, prowess and high tech just totally was disarmed by a bunch of novices, really. People that had no idea what they're doing. Yes, they reported that one of the ways that Hamas got intelligence was basically off social media. People were just posting bases and different things, and they just pieced everything together. It's amazing. Like when Hashem wants something to happen, you don't even need any Mossad, you don't need anything, any spy. It's just basics. They just went online. They said, oh, here's a little bit of this base, and here's a picture of that base, and here's a picture of that. They put it all together, and they knew better than people that were in the army for a long time what was going on in their own bases. It's amazing. When Hashem wants something to happen, there's no shortage of ways. And if there's a gzerah, no amount of ishtadlut is going to make a difference. One thing that could make a difference is ishtadlut beruchani, which is not what we're discussing, but the spiritual, like what it says with Mordechai, when he got the whole nation together and they prayed and they fasted and they mourned. So that can rescind the decree. But that's a spiritual energy that's able to do it, and that's actually what Hashem wants. It's the whole reason why He brings the decree in the first place. Now let's move on a little bit later in the Parashat. The Parashat tells us, the Parashat over here says that Moshe Rabbeinu sees the very famed sneh. Where is this? Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. He sees the burning bush, it's on fire, but it doesn't get consumed. I want to turn and see this amazing sight. What's happening? Hashem sees that Moshe Rabbeinu has turned to see. So there's a very clear correlation over here. Hashem saw that Moshe turned to see, and then he spoke to him. And the commentaries highlight this point. So we want to really understand, Moshe Rabbeinu is the great leader of Am Yisrael, the leader of the generations, right? There was no leader like Moshe. He's an incredible leader. It's a person to take Am Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, a person to do makot, a person that went ahead and Kriyat Yamsuf, and he was the person that goes up to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, the Zchut of the Man, the fighting of Og, all those miracles after miracles, almost like not surprising. Moshe Rabbeinu, it's like lehavdi, like you go ahead and you see like a movie, and the movie starts off, and you know the guy is so strong, he's so powerful, he's always going to win. So Moshe Rabbeinu is like, yeah, of course he's going to win. Even the Malach HaMavet couldn't beat him. So there's a competition between Malach HaMavet and Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, of course Moshe Rabbeinu is going to win. He was such a great leader. It was such a given out of his greatness. But how did he become a manhig in Am Yisrael? Now that's really the $1 million question. How does Moshe Rabbeinu become the leader? So we're used to sort of it's a Dvar Torah I've said in the past, but the basic answer to that question is Vayar b'sivlotam. Moshe Rabbeinu cared about Am Yisrael. We see time and time again, the Torah prefaces that he went out and he saw the suffering of Am Yisrael and he put himself inside that suffering. He helped the Jews over there. When there were two Jews fighting against each other, he intervened. He took a part in that. Not only that, then he runs away and he goes to the house of Yitro. And of course, the daughters of Yitro are essentially abused. The Midrashim say very harsh things that were happening to the daughters of Yitro. And the main reason it was retribution for Yitro leaving Avodah Zarah and essentially worshiping God. So because he did that, they wanted to, spite him. They sort of ostracized him, and anybody in his family was affected from that. So they were physically tortured and badgered. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes and saves them too. Vayakom Moshe vayoshian. Moshe Rabbeinu says, the Torah highlights all of these incidents clearly to be a preface, and there's a famous midrash. The midrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu was the shepherd of Yitro. And one time, as he was watching the sheep, one of the goats that went off and started running away. And Moshe Rabbeinu chased after it, and it was running fast, and Moshe Rabbeinu was running after it, and it ran until it got to a place where there was a little bit of a pond. And he sees that the goat starts to drink. So Moshe Rabbeinu sees, and he says to himself, to the goat, he says, I didn't realize that the goat was so thirsty. Mistama, it's very tired, and that's why it was running. It's tired, it's thirsty. I'm going to pick it up. I'll pick it up, and I'll bring it back. And Moshe Rabbeinu had the sensitivity to care that the goat was struggling. It was a little kid goat, and he picked it up all the way back and carried it all the way back. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw the sensitivity of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, if that's how he treats the goats of a person, alachat kama v'chama, how much he'll treat my tzon, my own children, my own flock, and how he's going to be careful, and therefore he is fit to be the manhig of Am Yisrael. So it comes out that Moshe Rabbeinu's care, his chesed, his kindness for all of Am Yisrael is what made him the leader. But if you think about it, it's got to be a little bit more than that, right? I mean, there's a lot of people in the world that are very compassionate, very caring, very selfless, and it's not the only quality, really. To become a leader, you need a lot more than that, especially Tak Kadosh Baruch Hu, to lead a nation, to be before Paro. What is it? It's only chesed. As great as chesed is, we're not chas v'shalom demeaning it, but like that's everything. That's what made him Moshe Rabbeinu. The fact that he had kindness and compassion. There's a lot of people out there in the world that are very compassionate and really genuinely compassionate, and still, like, it doesn't make a person fit to be a manhig. So how do we understand that? So really, we have to take a step back even more than what we just mentioned. We have to. The whole parasha is really from the beginning, from Shemot, all the Ve'ele Shemot Bnei Yisrael, all the way to the Sneh, is really a prelude to how Moshe Rabbeinu becomes a manhig. So let's take a step all the way to Yocheved and Miriam. These are two giants, right? The Torah describes in the very beginning of Parashat, Paro summons them. He says to them, you are very experienced. How long have you been doing this? We've been doing this for 20 years. You know what we're doing? Okay, this is the new order. The order is, anytime that you see a boy, kill him. Says Paro. And the Miyaledot, which of course we know is Yocheved and Miriam, they were very smart. They didn't say, how could we do that? Paro, that's not the right thing to do. They didn't try to convince him because they knew that they can't convince him. So instead, they just said, yeah, okay, no problem, sure. Yes, sir. It's something my father always taught me about the Israeli army. My dad was in the army in the years where they had a lot of wars. It was one of the reasons he came to America. It's just like too many wars going on, and he was a part of all the Yom Kippur, the 6-Day War. That was when he was like in his 20s, and so he says that in the army you never ask questions. They tell you to do something, the generals, you just say yes, sir. So sure enough, one time, he loves this story. One time, my dad used to make troubles in the army. He was like, I'm going to do it my way. But the generals don't like when you do things your way. Like they have what's called salute. You have to do a salute in the beginning. And one time, when you do the salute, you have to be mamash frozen. You do a salute and you have to stay there. You can't move. And one time a fly came. So he went like this. And that's like a terrible thing. You're not allowed to do that. So the general's like, what are you doing? He's like, what do you want me to do? A fly came. What, I should have moved it away? Like he would speak back. So there's a little bit of a, he would make trouble. So one time the general wanted to punish him. He said, okay, you're going to have to paint. You have the whole weekend. You have to paint the whole balcony. So my dad said, yes, sir. 100%. He comes back, it's Sunday night. Why didn't you paint the balcony? Did you give me paint? Did you give me a brush? Did you give me anything? How am I supposed to paint with? What am I supposed to paint? See, usually in American, what he would say, in the beginning, he would say, oh, how am I supposed to paint? And then they'd give him the stuff, and then he'd have to do it. My father did it the other way. He said, yes, sir. Then they didn't do it. I said, well, how you want me to do it? You didn't give me anything. That's the brilliance. So the Yocheved and Miriam, they didn't say, Paro, you can't do this, it's not right. They said, yes, sir. Then they said, okay, we'll worry about it when the time comes. In the meantime, a few months pass, who knows how long pass. Paro looks at the records. Mazal tov, baby boy, mazal tov, baby boy, mazal tov, baby boy. He looked at all the statuses, right? And he saw all the baby boys. He says, what's going on over here? So he calls them back. He calls Yocheved and they tell him, look, what can we do? They keep giving birth. Ki hayot henna, before we even get there. So if you think about it, the argument that they're saying is not a worthy argument, really. Because what do you mean? We did research. You're doing this for 20 years. You're the experts. That means you've been how can you tell me that the job that you're an expert in, you never end up doing it because they end up giving birth before? That's like saying, okay, we got our Yossi, our air conditioner man, right? Imagine we say, Yossi, what's your experience? 20 years. I've been doing it. 30 years I've been doing air conditioning. Okay. Yossi, have you fixed an air conditioning? I never did one. What do you mean you never? So how do you have 20 years of experience but you never did one? That doesn't make sense. Of course, the person who's experienced does. What are they saying to Paro? Yeah, we have experience. Of course, we're the best. But he says, so why'd you keep him alive? Yeah, because they give birth before. What does it mean? You don't do it. You don't have a job. It's not a real job then. So the pshat is, so how does it work? How does it fly? How does Paro accept it? The answer is, if they came and they didn't do it because of ethics and because of, their own personal objections, Be'emet Paro would have seen right through them. But because they did it, Vatirena miyaledot, it was all out of Yirat Shamayim. So when it comes from Yirat Shamayim, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'll figure out the details. It doesn't have to make sense. You're doing it from Yirat Shamayim, even an excuse that otherwise wouldn't be mitkaber, all of a sudden, the judge looks and says, wow, that's a good point. It's not a good point, but the judge likes the point. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one in charge, and he makes people see good or makes people see not good. Beautiful chidush that the Brisker Rav says. He says, Stam, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewarded Yocheved and Miriam, Vayas lahem batim. He built for them homes, and Rashi says on the spot, which is based on the Midrash, batim, bate melucha, ubate keuna, kingship and Kohanim. Right, Moshe Rabbeinu was a king. He was a Geder Nasi, a Melech in Am Yisrael. And of course, Aaron was the Kohen. But the question is, what's the Midah Keneged Midah? Like, where's the measure for measure? So they saved Jews, so they deserved maybe, a lot of children for saving all the Jews. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should make them have a lot of kids. But why Malchut? Why Kiuna? So he says, beautiful. Imagine